Hey, it's Verity here on my YouTube channel and blog, Pretty Little Button. If you're new here, I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. Today, I'm so happy to be taking part in the Papercrafters Unite Against Racism YouTube hop. The goal of this hop is to come together to stand behind our crafty sisters and brothers of colour, not just in the art industry, but also to show our support in the never-ending fight for equality all over the world. Hopefully you'll also be introduced to new crafters within the industry, and you'll find links below where there are more links to other black artists to support within the industry. I'm looking forward to finding new crafters too and widening my exposure to crafters as well. So let's get started with my card for today's video. Originally I was going for a 1-layer card, so I started off by die cutting a rectangle using my Waffle Flower A2 layering dies out of Inka Dinka Doo masking paper. Now I'm positioning this onto a white card panel and I'm just using my T-ruler to line this up straight. Now don't worry if you don't have a T-ruler or you misalign it, you can just easily trim your card panel down at the end to realign it so it's straight. For this card I'm using the Altenew Ruffled Flowers stamp set, which is a layering stamp. Now to work out the positioning, I like to take the outline layer and position this over the panel until I'm happy with its position. Now, if your outline layer isn't like this, where it doesn't have floral and leaves within the same outline, you can obviously skip this part. But because it's got both, I wanted to place it down so I can ensure that I'm going to be laying my flower layer down later, and I'm also leaving space within the card panel for the leaves. So next I'm placing the first layer of the florals down over on top of the outline layer. Now this is useful because I can then close my Misty door. I will pick up the flower layer and I can remove the outline layer from the Misty, and I'm just then stamping up the floral first layer stamp. Now this is stamped in Catherine Pooler Sugared Lavender ink. Now I'm going to show you this just once more. So I'm first laying down the outline layer to make sure that the design doesn't overlap the first floral. I can then position the first layer of the floral over the top of this, aligning the layer up with the outline, and then I'm closing the Misty door. It will obviously pick up that first floral layer stamp, and then I just remove the outline layer from my Misty, and I can then ink up the floral layer and stamp it onto my card panel. So for this floral, I'm going with a pink colour, and I'm stamping the first layer up in Catherine Pooler Pink Champagne ink. So I've repeated this for the remaining florals around the mast area, and then I've moved on to the second layer of the stamps. Now for these, you don't need the outline layer to align the second layer. You can easily align the second layer of the florals over the stamped layer on the card. So for the purple flowers, I'm using the Catherine Pooler A Queen for a Day inks as a darker purple. And then for the pink florals, I've used Catherine Pooler Sangria ink as a darker pink. To add just a little bit more interest to these florals, I'm going to stamp the outline layers and then emboss them. So I'm just repositioning one of the outline layers over the florals. I'm inking this up with my Wow Clear Ultra Slow Drying Embossing ink. I'm then covering this in Wow Metallic Gold Rich and Pale Embossing Powder. Now Catherine Pooler inks remain sticky a little after stamping, so I should have quickly heat set the stamping before inking the outlines, as I got a little straight embossing powder over the petals. However, if this happens to you, don't worry, just use a small brush to brush away the powder and it works perfectly fine. Now I would advise you remove the masking paper before you heat set the embossing powder. The heat gun may affect the adhesive on the masking paper, and we just want to keep using it for the remainder of the outline layers, but we don't want the actual masking paper to not stick. So just remove it, heat set the embossing powder, and then you can go back and realign your masking paper back onto the card. And you can easily align this more at the corners, is probably easier, but you've got that outline on the card to line it up with. So then place another outline over one of the florals, repeat inking and covering with embossing powder and heat setting, and just finishing off all the florals within that mast area. So when you've finished, you will have a lovely decorative floral frame around a white rectangle space. Now I wanted this space because I wanted to add a sentiment in the middle of the card. And as I mentioned, I was originally planning on keeping this card 1 layer. But for some reason, I just can't seem to do 1-layer cards. I always end up adding dimensions somehow. So this time I added the sentiment with some foam pads for dimension. The sentiment I'm using on this card comes from the Altenew Reason to Smile stamp set, and I'm using the sentiment, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." I thought this sentiment seemed quite appropriate and apt for this hop, as a lot of us may feel we have to start where we are, so we can't change what's already happened, but we can educate ourselves and change the outcome. For me, I'm finding that this is understanding unconscious bias and systemic racism and how I can help to reduce this within society. So this was stamped onto black card and heat set with Wow Opaque Bright White Embossing Powder. I trimmed this down and foam mounted onto the front of the card within that white space, and it gave a lovely nice frame to the sentiment. The whole card panel was trimmed down and then added to a white card base. And to finish this card off, I'm using my Pick Me Up tool along with Gina K Connect Glue to add sequins. Now these sequins come from the Plum Sequin Mix from Lucy's Cards. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and picked up a few tips on how to line up layering stamps. As I mentioned, this is part of the Papercrafters Unite Against Racism Hop, so if you look in the description box below, you'll find a link to my blog post as well as Jocelyn Hovey's, where you can find many links and information on how to help in the fight against racism. Also, you'll find a list with links to the supplies I use as well in the description box below. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and why not think about subscribing to the channel. If you do, don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. Also, why not check out this other video for some more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!